Rome wielded power over kings, countries, and people's minds for 1,260 years. How was this possible? What were the circumstances that made it possible for the Papal Church to rise to such heights of power for such a long period of time?
How did it come about that Rome laid claim to all this political power in the first place? Because when we look at the formation of Christianity, the very beginnings, Jesus seems to have separated the powers. Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar what is due unto Caesar, and unto God what is due unto God." And he did not interfere in this political realm at all. And neither did any of his disciples. So how did it come about that the Bishop of Rome could lay claim to this political power? Well, it all happened in the early stages of the development of the system. The church fathers became more and more interested in political power than they were in ecclesiastical power. And Augustine wrote a compilation of documents that led to this way of thinking. One of his books was called The City of God. And in this philosophy, Augustine suggests that the Bishop of Rome should have also political power, and as one political system after the other should become subservient to the Bishop of Rome, so the kingdom of God would be expanded. And when all the nations of the world were subject to the Bishop of Rome, then the kingdom of God would have arrived on earth.
As the church grew, so did its influence, and kings and emperors saw value in forming alliances with church leaders. This helped advance the ambitions of the church. Emperor Constantine helped the church toward its goals when he declared Christianity the state religion. He did still more when he involved himself in church affairs by calling the First Council of Bishops to meet in Nicaea in 325. The Nicene Creed, which came out of that conference, established a standard of religion by setting out the beliefs of Roman Christianity. And because of the involvement of the emperor, to disagree was to commit both heresy and treason. Thus, the way was paved for the Roman church system, which slipped into the power vacuum left at Rome when Constantine moved his capital to Constantinople just 5 years later. And as the Roman Empire began to crumble, the most visible reminder of the fading imperial power was the head of the state religion, the Bishop of Rome. So it was only natural that he should grow in religious and political stature. The invading Gothic tribes that ransacked the empire were Christianized and looked to the Bishop of Rome as the chief over all the churches. Nevertheless, the Goths held political control of Rome and Italy until they were defeated in 538. At the same time, the emperor removed Pope Silverius, a suspected Goth supporter, replacing him with one who would be loyal to him. In return, Justinian lent his support to the ambitions of the Roman Church. In 533, Emperor Justinian had already declared the bishop at Rome the head of all the churches. Being the imperial bishop further bolstered the Pope's claim to authority over all the Christian churches. Subsequent popes tightened their grip on ecclesiastical power until no one doubted their claim to authority over all the churches of Christendom. In 754, under threat of the Lombard invasion, Pope Stephen appealed to King Pippin of France for help. The two formed a long-standing alliance which endures to this day. Pippin defeated the Lombards and presented the keys of cities and territories in central Italy to the Pope. These were imperial states and not his to give. Nevertheless, the so-called donation gave the Pope his own sovereign territory, the start of the Papal States. In return, the Pope anointed and crowned Pippin and his two sons, one of whom was Charlemagne. Many other fake documents were produced that established the power of the Bishop of Rome. In 800, the Pope crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Western Roman Empire, an illegal act which set Charlemagne against the emperor who ruled in Constantinople. But it also strongly connected the French kings with the Roman Church and invested the Pope and his successors with a great deal of influence over them. The next great step was to bring secular governments into submission. Over time, through Rome's involvement in church affairs in every nation, the Bishop of Rome and his underlings came to be seen as advisors to kings. But it wasn't until 1073 that papal authority was imposed upon secular rulers. At that time, Pope Gregory VII claimed that as God's representative, he also had authority over kings. He excommunicated the Emperor, Henry IV, and declared that no bishop in all of Christendom could take office without his approval.
The clergy of all nations were by this time enslaved to the papacy, and by obeying its bulls of excommunication and giving effect to its interdicts, they placed in the Pope's hand a lever to move the world.
The excommunication of the emperor opened the way for ever greater outrages.
John of England and Philip II of Aragon were both constrained to resign their kingdoms and receive them back as spiritual fiefs from the Roman pontiff, who claimed also the right to decide the election of the emperors of Germany by his confirmation or veto.
Unwittingly, by allowing Rome's overreach, the nations established Rome's power. Step by step, the papacy gained independent sovereignty, absolute supremacy over the Christian Church, and finally full control over the princes of Europe. Europe, ruled by religious despots in the Dark Ages, was the outcome of Augustine's vision of a kingdom of God on earth.
The Bible teaches a totally different doctrine. The Bible teaches that the kingdom is a spiritual kingdom and that it's not a kingdom of this world. And so the lines seem to have gotten crossed. And the idea that political power would lead to the expansion of the kingdom of God became the driving force behind the papal agenda. What was the result of this seeking of the political prestige? The result was the Dark Ages.
Coming September 1 on 80tv.watch, the long-awaited Conviction Series Episode 1. Watch for the exclusive premiere available on August 12th only on 80tv.watch. Are you a user yet?